Biden just spoke about tapping the strategic oil reserve. He's trying to deal with soaring gas prices. There's a lot going on here, so I'm going to spend a little time on it with you. First of all, even Democrats know that high gas prices are bad for their electoral prospects. They can spin a lot of things, but when people see close to all-time high prices at the gas pump, they think to themselves, I think we've got a little bit of a problem here. And they can be told, oh, no, it's not. Don't believe your lying eyes or the cash that's leaving your hand or the credit card bill that's getting racked up. But they see the price. And they also are feeling the pain of inflation. And of course, all these things are related. So Biden's announced he's going to put out strategic oil. He's going to tap the strategic oil reserves, put out 1 million barrels a day here to try to ease the pain. He's also talking about, or there, I should say, is conversation among Democrats around trying to just send people checks in one way or another. I mean, they'll call it a stimulus payment or what. They'll come up with something, but they're going to try to just use the money gun because their policies ain't going to get it done. One thing they're really against still is increasing domestic energy production. This is where you find the ideological issues that Democrats have with things. They recognize the political challenges of high gas prices. They know that they got to do something or else they're in big trouble in the midterms. They're probably in big trouble anyway. It's just a question of how bad it's going to be. But here, for example, is Biden proposing to fine companies who have unused oil permits. Speaking of central planning being crappy, here's another version.
Right now, oil and gas industry is sitting on nearly 9,000 unused but approved permits for production on federal lands, or more than 1 million unused acres they have a right to pump on. So, to help execute this first part of my plan, I'm calling for a use it or lose it policy. Congress should make companies pay fees on wells on federal leases they haven't used in years, and acres of public land they're hoarding without production. Companies that are already producing from these wells won't be affected, but those sitting on unused leases and idle wells will either have to start producing or pay the price for their inaction.
This only sounds good, Clay, to somebody who is honestly like a little socialist who has no idea how a business actually functions, how investment in business infrastructure works. Is there even gas on these used leases? You say, oh, well, if there's not, they won't care about losing it. Okay, but is it worth at the prices right now that gas costs for them to put the investment? Is it a 2-year or 3-year investment process? It's not as easy as just, why aren't you drilling in the places that we told you could drill? If they could make money, I have a feeling, Clay, they'd be drilling there.
Well, and also, this is all politics, right? 6 months, 180 million barrels. That's just in time for the election, right? I mean, it's so transparent. Biden has got a 40% approval rate. The vast majority of the American public holds him responsible for inflation. The place where inflation hits people most viscerally. Buck, over the weekend, I went and filled up my car. I was out at the Little League Stadium, and my dad went to watch the games too. And so my dad was in the car while I was pumping up the car, and on our drive out, he said, hey, and this is why dads or moms are great. Like, every time I see my dad or my mom, Buck, they give me like $20, as if, I'm 42 years old now. But my dad's always like, hey, you need a little cash. Here's $25 or whatever, But he said, hey, you need to make sure you fill up where we're going to the Little League Stadium, because the gas is going to be 40%, 40 cents cheaper on that side of town, 45 miles out of town compared to where you live now. Still over $100. And my dad couldn't stop talking about the fact that it cost over $100 to fill up my car. This is the place where people viscerally respond. It's not a coincidence, Buck, that Biden is specifically releasing oil from the strategic reserve for the 6 months leading up to the midterms. He's trying to do whatever he can for those 6 months to make gas prices lower. Now, hopefully the Ukraine-Russia situation is going to get resolved, and whatever excess is in the gas price market will just start to come down, because this is a real tax on people who can afford it the least. But it's a transparent political move that is designed to make people think things are not as bad as they are.
Yeah, it's really just like the government saying, hey, we're just going to send you some money every month now, just to make, because the supply and demand issue is what's setting the price where it is.
Yes.
So instead of actually dealing with it in a meaningful way, they're saying, well, we've just set aside this oil before, so that's federal government property, and we're just going to give it to you now so you don't realize that we're going to be back at the same supply and demand issue the moment that they stop, most likely. I mean, who knows what the production will be in the future, but it's very possible. But, Clay, then that also brings me to, Pelosi, for whom the price of gas. Nancy Pelosi couldn't tell you the price of gas at the top of her head, obviously. Hasn't pumped her own gas, I would wager, in 50 years?
Oh, that's a great question.
At least 40 years. Like, hasn't pumped her own. I mean, she's
When
almost
is the
80.
last time Nancy Pelosi pumped her own gas is a fantastic question.
At least 40 years, I'd say. Maybe 50. And, so she would probably be like, gosh, that's like 2 bits. She'd pull out a couple quarters. And then we have Pelosi also making it clear to everybody she doesn't know the price of gas. She doesn't know what a gallon of milk costs. I can assure you of that, too, because, the servants bring her milk. And here she is telling everybody we cannot increase domestic gas production. Good heavens, no, because that's going to hurt the climate change issue.
But we cannot allow the fossil fuel industry to use this as an excuse to reverse everything we're doing to save the planet. One of the things I think that the president may say, I don't have this as a fact, is that we will use the Defense Production Act to speed up diversification so that we're not so dependent on oil.
So Nancy Pelosi is ridiculous. She's making arguments that are the exact opposite, by the way, Buck, of what Biden said, because Biden said we're going to find people who aren't producing more oil, and now Nancy Pelosi is saying we can't produce more oil because it will cause an issue for the economy. Biden also continues this awful argument. The first person I saw who made it, Buck, was Mayor Pete. Mayor Pete said, hey, if gas prices are too high, what you need to do is go buy an electric vehicle, even though electric vehicles at best are $50,000 a year. And if you are struggling with the increased costs of gas, you're unlikely to be able to buy a brand new vehicle that is an electric car. Biden says, though, hey, if you're struggling with gas prices, he just said this, Buck, what you need to do is what? Buy an electric vehicle. Listen.
We need to embrace all the tools and technologies that can help us free us from our dependence on fossil fuels. That's why today I'm issuing a directive to strengthen our clean energy economy. I'm going to use the Defense Production Act to secure American supply chains for the critical materials that go into batteries for electric vehicles and the storage of renewable energy, lithium, graphite, nickel, and so much more. We need to end our long-term reliance on China and other countries for inputs that will power the future. And I'll use every tool I have to make that happen.
That's not going to deal with the problem. We want more American domestic natural gas and oil production. That actually helps the problem.
Yeah, no doubt. And here is that cut 28, that says how much a typical driver will save. Just buy an electric car, guys. If you're struggling at the pump, Biden's got the answer.
Under my plan, which is before the Congress now, we can take advantage of the next generation of electric vehicles that a typical driver will save about $80 a month from not having to pay gas at the pump.
If they just buy an electric car, Buck, everything will be fine.
I still hold to this, Clay. I think shut up about the high gas prices, peasant, and buy a Tesla is not a great slogan for the Democrats going into the midterms. I don't want to help them too much, but I think they should come up with something else.